It is May 22nd, and welcome to your next 24. I am a tarot reader from Brooklyn, New York. Actually, home for a very long time has been Harlem. I moved to Brooklyn just before the pandemic, literally in January. I still have a home in Harlem, but I'm living out the pandemic and potentially living out time here in Brooklyn. But just before this read, I was looking at a Facebook page of a friend of mine in Harlem. There's been several who have passed away from this virus, and I've been sick myself, but I'm still here. I was feeling sad, and I thought, I'm also part of a online survivors group, and we're talking about the country reopening and how we feel about that. And I think this reading, at least I'm going to take it from that perspective. Now, again, this could apply to many different areas of your life because it's about owning your truth. And we're going to get to it. So we have the Hierophant reversed, the Five of Wands, and the Ten of Swords. Do you remember the Ten of Swords the other day when I was explaining in the Victorian Romantic Tarot how the water was, taking the shape of this individual and pulling him into the ocean, ending. And I was saying how it was a kind of morbid, but I mean, Ten of Swords cards basically are often quite gruesome. So we're going to start, this is case in point. This is the Rider-Waite deck. So the Hierophant reverse, we've been dealing with this energy all week, not surprising. The Hierophant upright is about, traditionally about tradition, our values, higher institutions. Sometimes people call this card the Pope. It can represent marriage, relationships that have been solidified in institutions like paperwork and the church. I often see it as a card of doctors, but it's those who have positions of authority in areas involving higher education, learning, office, and so forth. And we've been talking a lot about how do we interpret and internalize norms, what we are told to believe, what we feel we believe, what we're hearing. And it's, I'm realizing we're all hearing conflicting messages, right? Five of Wands is conflict. It is, none of us seem to be on the same page, or even those who maybe think the virus is a hoax don't seem to be on the same page. Even those who believe in the virus don't seem to be on the same page. I can't imagine anyone in New York City who doesn't acutely understand the reality of COVID-19, but I still see people walking around without face masks. I absolutely do every day in New York City. So, I think this is just about how do we navigate this? How do we, as individuals, when nothing is consistent, outside of us, how do we find that internal consistency of what we believe? Because if we keep struggling and we keep vacillating between the angel and the devil, and they both show up here in this reading on our shoulder, it's not going to end well, basically, is what this line is saying. So how do we stop that storm of conflict? And I believe this is inner conflict. I do not believe it is our job to change anyone's mind. Often we try, and it doesn't feel so great. People don't listen, or they half listen. And I really think it is not our job to convince someone of something, but it is our job to live our truth and be an example of our truth. So No, we may not have clear leadership. We may not have clear answers from anyone. But this is encouraging you to find yours. Because we have the Two of Swords. This is true. This is true. I don't see a way forward. How are you going to choose? Well, we have the High Priestess. Again, I often see this, and I'm really touched by seeing this in the center of the spread. I really was just talking to a friend who passed, and High Priestess often shows up when there is angelic protection. I don't know if I'm going to post this, but whew. She is the shaman. She is the sorceress sometimes. She is the master of that which is unseen. Again, I see the High Priestess often as angel. Interestingly, she's the third card in the Major Arcana, right? It starts at 0. And I've been reading lately the Major Arcana as a story, the Fool's Journey, just looking at different decks and looking how they tell the Fool's Journey, the story of the Fool's Journey. And I love the Romantic Victorian Tarot because Victorian Romantic Tarot. I'm sorry, this reading is all the hell over the place today. It's where my mind is. New moon in Gemini. But she's shown as a sorceress, right? We go from the Fool. I think it goes to the Fool, to the Magician, Hierophant, High Priestess. I think that's true. I'd have the bad tarot reader. But she's shown as someone who's like, starting, I kind of think about it, the mysteries of creation. Not necessarily a godly, however you define God, individual, but just the mystery of creation, the mystery of our beginning. And she stays there. That's where she lives. Also, interestingly, I take this as a very Neptunian card, and I know there's some crazy Neptune stuff going on right now. Not an astrologer. And then we have the King of Pentacles. Wow, this is rambling reading today. Grounded energy, the King of the Suit of Pentacles, which is grounded, dealing with material aspects of our lives, money, property, possession. This can be an earth sign, but just kind of dialing back and taking a look at those three energies, not knowing which way to turn, not having clear answers from any direction, feeling torn. But how do we anchor ourselves? And I think the answer that's being encouraged here is to consider, how do you ground yourself? And when you are grounded, do you feel in line with your truth? You can call it a spiritual truth. You can call it just a moral compass inside of yourself. And that's really yours to define. I'm not here to tell you what's right, because it'll just be frustrating. And nor should I'm encouraging you not to do that for others either. What is your truth? How do you define it? How do you ground yourself? And how are you going to make a decision about how you move forward? Because we have the angel here and we have the devil here. We are feeling torn. We are feeling, this tension of, maybe wanting to live free. The Ace of Wands, if it was upright, would be about fresh starts. The Ace of Action, the Ace of Fire. But again, not really sure if that's the direction we should go. Feeling restricted. These two cards have been here almost every single day this week. Feeling restricted, feeling bound, feeling, these are things that are oppressive. Can often be actual addiction. Feeling chained to a situation. It's upright here. We are feeling it. We are feeling this lockdown, but we still can't act. We still are not sure if we should act. Ace of Wands reversed. Just not ready for that spark or really grasping at anything to give us that direction of how to move forward. And again, it's really these two cards that I'm going to say define it. How do you feel grounded? And how do you feel centered in yourself? With that, there's all of the mysteries of why this is happening, and who, the mysteries of creation. How do you settle yourself? How do you find that quiet space? Because you're going to need it. The magician has all of the tools of the tarot. The cup, the pentacle, the sword, the wand are on the table. The saying that often comes with the magician, so as is above, so is below. The infinity symbol over his head. It's really quite I see this card and I think someone who is in their power. And I'm not here to tell you what the truth or the real, what your truth is. Only you can do that. Only you can decide how to move forward in the best possible way for you and feel good and confident and in line with your moral compass, High Priestess. But use all of the tools. Base it in your need for financial security, emotional security. Make sure, you're acting. Here's a sword. We've made a decision. We've put down one of the swords. A sword, and we know how we're going to move forward, that Ace of Wands, in our truth. And the last card, I just want to be clear what was under the deck. This does not mean literal death, okay? But it does mean massive transformation. Massive, is death being the greatest transformation we will go through in our lifetime. We are all going to die. That's just the reality. That's all the ending to our stories. And how we live in between birth and death is our legacy. This is also telling about a world that is not ever going to be something that we had before. People keep talking about, and I do feel comfortable saying this, people keep talking about going back to normal. There is no going back to normal. There has been a lot of transitions to death for a lot of individuals. There is no going back to normal. We will all live with this moment in our hearts and our minds and our souls. It's defined a generation. So what is our truth in that? How do we move forward with the information that we have, even if it's highly conflicting information? Which sword are we going to drop? We're going to drop one of them. And how are we going to move forward, standing in our power, standing in our truth? Because the world is forever changed. Make no mistake. Ground yourself. And find a way to be proud of who you are. Sorry, this was a little bit of a heavy reading today. Thanks for stopping by. Know you are loved, and I will talk to you soon.